So we're going to tie a moss fly. This is a fly that we use a lot for carp and rough fish species during what we jokingly call our scum hatch. If you can imagine the algae, the slime builds up on our local bridges, dams, and spillways, and then starts to break loose and the fish get in there and feed on it. So in the vise, I went ahead and I've got a size 6 streamer hook. These work great on 6s and 8s. Whatever hook you use, just make sure you're using something 2x heavy if you're going to go after rough fish. And then for weight, I've got a 4mm bead, but you could obviously make that bigger or smaller or add some extra wire for more weight. For my thread, I'm just going to use some 6/0 Danville and kind of a brown olive. We'll get that started on the hook. And this bead is actually going to be hidden within the body of the fly. It's not going to be visible. So what I'm going to do is wrap my thread up to it, use the tag into my thread to jump around and over, wrap behind it, and then I can kind of crisscross that a few times. I'm not really all that worried about getting that too secure, as in, what I mean by that is that these thread wraps that are just going over the bead are not going to be exposed, so they will not break. They'll be covered up. So once we feel like we've got that pretty well wrapped down, I'll go ahead and take my thread the rest of the way down to the hook point, and I can trim off that excess. So for dubbing on this, I'm going to use SLF for the front collar or hackle and the tail. Everything is going to be coming off of a whiting soft hackle with chickabou, so really kind of a 3-material fly. Let's go ahead and get started with the tail. What this is it's the chickabou portion of that feather, and I'm just going to tie that in about half the length of the hook. Really more for some movement than anything else. So we'll go ahead and wrap that down. And I'm going to go ahead and start working on covering up that bead and building some taper into the fly. So I know this is going to look a little goofy for a second, but you got to just trust the process. Now that I've got that tied in, I can go ahead and give that a 1/4 of a twist and cut that off. And here we go. So since this is a big fly, the way I like to apply my dubbing, rather than putting it on small amounts at a time, is I'm actually going to grab a big chunk of this SLF dubbing. I'll go ahead and get it started on my thread, nice and tight like we would any other dubbing. But then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have that in my hand with my bobbin holder. We got to secure that on a little bit more. What I can do is get a couple of tight wraps on there, use that as an anchor. And now using direct dubbing, I'm just going to go ahead and feed larger pieces of that on and try to thread that dubbing or feed that dubbing out as I wrap, so that I don't have to sit here and just keep continually applying dubbing to the thread. There we go. That's going to work pretty good. I've got a little bit of loose dubbing here, so I can just kind of pick that off. And then for the front portion of my fly, I've kind of gone back and forth over the years on whether or not I use marabou or whether I use more of a soft hackle. Now that these whiting chickabou pelts have some of the bigger soft hackle, I tend to use those, but you could absolutely use some woolly bugger marabou or something like that on them. So I'm going to treat this just like a traditional soft hackle fly. I'll stroke those fibers out to kind of get my measurement, and I want to use the longest fibers on the feather, so we're going to go about right there. Create a tie-in point, cut myself a little bit of a triangle, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap that down. So I will fold that feather back. Now if you noticed, I went ahead and just left all the plumerous or the fluffy fibers on this stem. We'll work our way into some of them. We'll use a few of them. We won't get too much into it. Really, your limitation there is how thick that stem gets. If it gets to the point where it's no longer thin enough to wrap, we'll have to stop. And we're quickly getting to that point. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that feather just decided it was going to twist on me, so I'm going to back up, redo that wrap. And I think that's about as far as I'm going to get before that stem gets way too thick and starts kicking fibers in every direction. So I'll just go ahead and capture that down. I do like to sweep everything back and try to put a couple of wraps over just the stem, just for durability. And then I'll come in here and trim that nice and close. There we go. And then to finish the fly, we're just going to add a little bit more dubbing. I'm going to try to leave this pretty loose so that I can pick it out with the dubbing teaser. Again, using small amounts at a time is the way to go. So let me do a couple wraps to get that anchored. Then I'll tighten that up. And I can finish with my thread right in front of the dubbing. I will go ahead and take my fingers and just stroke back anything that's going forward so I can make that thread head. I want to take the twist out of my thread, grab my whip finisher, and go ahead and back to front whip finish. So now we're going to take an already buggy, kind of rough looking fly, and we're going to make it a little bit rougher. I'll grab my dubbing teaser, and I'll come in, and all that dubbing that we put around the head there, we're going to rake that out and kind of scrape it back. Like I said, this is supposed to look like a ball of moss or gunk floating in the water, so we want it to be pretty picked out and pretty buggy. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And there you go. A nice little fly that the carp love to eat. I've got some grass carp on it, but really, again, we target all the different rough species with this. Get out there, try to find yourself some scum hatching, and have some fun catching some fish.